right. Maya wrote in and said, what is the most memorable or best compliment you have ever received?
Okay, I don't know if it's the best one I've ever received, but it's the most memorable one. I was walking down the street with my really good friend Jamie. She's the best.
The best,
Um,
Jamie.
and random woman passes by us and says, "The two of you have great shoulders."
Oh, not like when you were told you have a neck of a goose, huh?
No, no, I wouldn't say that was a compliment, but it was just so random
Yeah.
and so out of the blue that I'll remember it we talk about it all the time.
Yes. Um, uh, listen, I'm gonna just say I don't think I've ever noticed your shoulders, but I will be noticing them moving forward to see how they look.
Listen, it was 10 years ago. I don't know if my shoulders are the same.
But I don't know what happens to shoulders over a decade, you know?
I think mine are going
Um,
like this.
okay, mine is such a good one.
I'm ready.
So when I was little, I must have been in kindergarten. And I went to a kid's birthday party at like fucking Leaps and Bounds. Did you have Leaps and Bounds? Remember that place?
No, I had Discovery Zone.
Discovery. It was exactly like Discovery
Yeah,
Zone.
yeah.
Okay, maybe it Leaps and Bounds turned into Discovery Zone actually.
Oh,
Remember when you left? They had uh the name tag ball.
no.
Oh my
Tell
god!
me
So you
what
had
that
a
is.
name tag when you were in there, and then you left. You put it on this big ball, and it like was a huge thing of just name.
Cool.
Maybe that was Leaps and Bounds. I don't know. Okay, whatever. So I show up to this birthday party, and I walk in, and this little boy in my class goes, "Mom, that's the girl with the face like an angel."
Oh my God, that's so nice.
And that little boy, his brother, is now our landlord in Westchester.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you guys date in kindergarten?
We listen. Okay. I don't forget. I repeated kindergarten. So I'm a twofer. I did 2 years of the kindy.
Of the candy.
And so we did get in kindergarten, and then he moved up to first, and I did not.
Wow,
Um,
was that where you guys broke up? Like,
no,
what was
I
the ending of
believe it
it?
still stayed for a while after that. I can't really remember,
You guys are still dating.
but he had a pet monkey, and so obviously, if someone has a pet monkey, just
You're
like
gonna
in
date them.
college, if somebody had a guy, I'd be like, I'm gonna have sex with him. Like I want to hang out with an animal. That's all I know.
Yeah,
Yes,
100%,
and
especially
that's
a
it.
monkey.
Yes, but a face like an angel.
Oh, we just
Wait,
found out
what?
that one of our clinicians
Has a pet duck,
has a
Jocelyn.
pet duck.
Wait, Nikki, please throw up some images now of Doug the duck. But one of our amazing clinicians, let me be clear, if you want to hang out, the coolest therapist ever, and you are in Florida, New York, and New Jersey, Jocelyn at our practice has a pet duck who lives with her.
And she got it in September and she just told us, we were like, Jocelyn, what took you so long to tell us?
Yeah, we should fire her just for that. I can't believe that I missed out on 6 months worth of duck content.
Oh my
And she
God.
wasn't putting it on social media. Like I'm not on social media, but she wasn't putting it up.
It was the most exciting day of my life hearing about Doug the
It's
duck.
so cool. All right, we'll ask her to take a video with Doug and we'll
Yes.
post it on ShrinkChicks. Okay, but we are here today. I have no idea how we're gonna wrap. I don't know how we're gonna
Well,
transition Doug the duck.
before we transition, I do want to mention something. Because we talked about mentioning this on the podcast, and I think it's really important. We are having an open house at the therapy group
We
in
are.
both of our locations,
Yes.
physical locations. And so if you are a clinician in the Westchester area, Philadelphia area, if you're in the area in some way, and you want to come to one of our open houses to network, to meet us, to meet other therapists, to meet our therapists,
It's in April.
it's in April. Well, we're having two of them, so we haven't
Yes.
really decided. But what we invite you to do is to send an email with your name, where you work, to contact@thetherapygroup.com. And we will put you on the invite list. And you can come to the therapy group. You can come to our open houses, enjoy some food, and meet some of our clinicians and meet us. We would love to meet you. So send us an email.
And like, we're not that far from other places, man. Make the drive in. Come chill.
New Jersey, if you're in New Jersey, come to
Yes,
Philly.
it's
You're
not
in
that bad.
Delaware, come
Very
to
close to
Westchester.
Westchester. Yes. So come on out, hang out with us. It's such a good networking opportunity for you, for us, for everything. Also, just like we love hanging out with clinicians. So it doesn't just have to be mental health, massage therapist, energy healing, a physical therapist. Come on out.
We
We would
want to
love to meet
connect.
you.
We want
I
to
forgot about that.
collaborate. Yep. Well, happy to
We'll
throw it in.
we'll we'll also throw it up on social media as well.
Yes.
But contact the therapygroup.com. Come hang out with us.
Come hang out with us. We can't
Yes.
wait.
I don't know how you want to roll that somehow to the top of the show because
Yeah.
the opposites attract.
We're opposites
Yes, we are.
and we attract.
We do. We do. But wait, let's talk about this. Okay, so we have to start out with this question, which is, do opposites attract? I feel like they did at the start of the relationship, but 10 years later it's killing us. And something Dr. Tracy said on our show a few months ago that I loved was, typically what attracts you to a person initially is what you resent about them later on. So my husband was like in college, right? Like he would do shit the last minute, right? Like we'd party, party, party. And then like the night before something, he'd stay up like all night long, which was like, I thought was awesome in college because like that's normal. That's what people are doing. 14 years later, I'm like, go to sleep. We have to be up in the morning. We have shit to do. Why do you procrastinate? So it is, I think it's very interesting. This person was able to identify that, is that like things that work at the start of the relationship starts to kill you later on, meaning we have to find a different solution and system. Boop, boop, bee.
I think I don't know if you guys caught that, but that was an original song. Just want to make sure everyone knows that that was original and on the spot.
Was someone thinking that was
Just want everyone to know that that was on the spot. Beautiful. No, I do think that's really common. And I think it is easy to have an opposite. And it's also, it's nice in some ways, right? It creates a level of homeostasis. It creates a level of balance where places where you might have strengths, your partner may lack in those strengths. Place in which your partner has strengths, you may lack. I think where we come into conflict is where we expect our partner to become us, and vice versa. And we get stuck in not being able to compromise with the other one, or understanding that the way in which they process, deal with things specifically is helpful for them. And we do things a little bit different. When we get to the place where there is conflict in that, I think that's once again where we get stuck. And it's hard to figure out, how do we navigate that? And we kind of hold it in instead of expressing it and saying, can we find a different way to do this? Right. Like, you know, when you also enter into like transitions in your relationship, like when you have a child, and I'm sure you can speak to this, where the differences in how you do things maybe didn't matter as much or didn't affect your relationship as much until you have other things that are placed into your relationship, or there's some sort of transition that you have to go through.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I think you just don't notice them as much, right?
Yeah.
Like when we didn't have to wake up at 6 a.m. because we had a 4-year-old in our bed. Whatever. I don't care what your schedule really is. If you're late for work, that shit's on you. It's totally different when your lives become way more intertwined.
Yes.
And I think that's especially a thing. A lot of people wrote about financial differences, right? Someone being a saver versus spender. And maybe at the beginning of your relationship, it's really nice because I'm a saver. This person pays for everything and spends. And that's awesome until we combine finances. And so I think it's so true. These things that are sort of sexy, interesting, mysterious, maybe feel really overwhelming and bring up anger for you later on.
Yes. Yeah. Someone wrote differences in life and big picture goals. Oof. That's a tough one. I mean, number one, here's my question. Are you married?
Well, listen, here's the other part that we're going to have to talk about is like, we understand we're therapists and we love talking, but this is some shit you got to talk about, y'all. Like, truly, if you were in a relationship and thinking about living your life with somebody else, you should have these conversations sooner. And I know it's maybe not sexy or flirty or whatever, but it is really important because I mean, we can't tell you, people that show up in the office that are like, oh, we never talked about having kids. I have no interest in having kids and he wants a million.
Yeah, like those are the types of things that are really important to talk about.
Yeah.
There might be big picture life goals that there can be some compromise on. For example, if one person's like, I really want to travel, and the other person's like, I'm not really interested in travel. You can really travel by yourself. Like, do you need your partner in order to
Mhm.
travel? That's a question you can ask yourself. Like when you
Or
picture traveling, do you need your partner with you, or can you do it separately if that's not a goal that they have?
or maybe once a year you go on a trip together and then the next year the other person does solo. But
Yep.
I think here's when it becomes complicated, right? Like let's say you're someone who wants to put all of your finances into improvements on the house. And the other person does not care about the house at all, but only wants to put their finances towards travel. I wasn't talking about you. You're outing yourself right now.
Speaking to my soul.
Your facial expression outed you. I did not out you.
Just, I couldn't help myself.
For the record, I wasn't even talking about you. I was just saying the big picture, but thank you. So, Jen, as a sense, you want to have a personal experience.
Oh, God. Going through a major house renovation right now. My husband is a realtor and his home is very important to him. And listen, I like that too. But is it my number one? Definitely not. But I think here's what I think is helpful in navigating this difference. When we had always talked about doing a renovation, Um, and even though it's not a priority to me, I understood that it was a priority to my husband and has always been a priority to my husband. And so during this conversation that we have about like where are we going to put our finances? What are we going to focus on? I've said like, okay, once we do this, like I want to be able to save money to travel. Like traveling is really important to me. It's something that I really want to do. Um, so as you're compromising, right? If you have different ideas about like where your finances are going, you can talk about that and say, okay, if we do this now, like I also need to do this afterwards. Like, what does this look like in the future? If it becomes so one sided, like nothing's ever 50-50, right? There are going to be times in your relationship where it leans one way and times in your relationship where it leads a different way. He is so affected because he's so detail oriented and he looks at houses all the time. He's so affected by his environment that I understood how important it was to him to make these edits to our house. So I could compromise on that. But I also am having the conversation around, well, listen, this is really important for you. I can support that, but let's talk about what this looks like in the future too. If I hold that in and I don't express it and I don't express what's important to me, then that could easily build resentment for me. So, in that compromise where you're talking about those differences, it's important for both people to express their opinion. And it's not about right or wrong. It's about, okay, maybe we lean a little bit this way in this moment, and maybe we're going to lean the other way in a different moment.
Yeah. Well, and somebody talked about, I think that's also something to keep in mind is like, I like the analogy you just gave of leaning one way versus the other, right? And it brings up someone had written about like handling different parenting styles. If you come together, and this is also the importance of constructive communication versus just conflict, right? If we come together and say we have very different parenting styles, when is mine maybe a little bit more useful versus when is yours a little bit more useful, right? So for me, my parenting style is very much like aware of her developmental stage, aware of her emotional stage, and like that, you know what I mean? So like I am like soft and strong, but like very warm, right? My husband is a little bit more like keep this shit moving, let's go, right? And there is times that his is needed, like bedtime. When she's just so tired, she just needs to go to bed. And me asking her how she feels a million times is not the most helpful thing, which really needs to happen, which is that she's tired and has to go to sleep. And so we know that in general, my husband has to handle bedtime. She sees me, mom's the weak link. She knows it, right? It's fine. We can talk about it. But I think this is the ability of saying, being very reasonable and intentional about using your different skills together We talked about this in another podcast. Oh, this was on someone else's. Never mind. I would say, we talked about this in someone else's podcast about like it's not about right versus wrong. It's about what's workable.
Yes.
So there are times that mine can be more helpful versus his, but when it's workable, we have to know the differences, and then we have to know when that person steps in, not when we attack each other.
Yes. Well, can I ask you a question, Em? Because I think this will be helpful. Like, how long did it take for you guys to figure that out? To like figure out how do we use our differences? Like,
Yeah,
what
4.5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what had to happen in order for you to figure out?
A lot of fights.
Yeah. So,
A lot of mine is better versus mine is better versus not working together. So I think a
yes.
lot of it, and let me tell you, especially when you're new parents in your first postpartum, that shit is such survival that like you don't have the ability to like do some of this stuff we're talking about, right? I
Yeah.
think this comes over time. Just like anything, the longer you're with someone, you know more parts of them, the longer that you're alive, you know more parts of yourself. And so I think it really does take time, but if you use some of these skills we're talking about sooner, you don't have to suffer as long as we did. Um we just talk about it, right? Here's the parenting style that's important to me. Here's what my parents do with me. Here's who I want to be. And when could mine verse, right? If my daughter gets hurt, she wants warm, cuddly mommy, right? Where's my mom? It's what she's going to say every time. That's no problem for me. I love being that person. But there's times that we really need dad there.
Mm-hmm.
And together, right? So using the different parts of both of ourselves. And for a while, I think it's really easy when you're also doubting your own, you're defensive.
Yeah. Well, I like that you say that. Like, there's right when you became a mom, it was the first time you were learning any of
Yes.
this to figure out like, who am I going to be as mom? What does this look like? What's helpful? What's not helpful? And so is your partner, right? At the same time, figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I said like, how long did that take is just to validate that in any transition, like this kind of thing takes time. And I think it highlights your differences too. Like it
Mm-hmm.
can really highlight how you handle things differently, how you cope differently. Um, and I think just really being conscious of that, that it's not about who's right and who's wrong or me versus you. It's like, how do we use these two new parts? How do we both figure out what this looks like for me, what this looks like for you? And how do we use them together? And what does that look like in this context? And that can
Yeah.
take time. That can take years.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, I got to bring up this one because I don't know. You know which one I'm going to bring up, right?
No.
Oh, someone wrote in how to handle different political affiliations.
Oh.
Seems like a no-no these days.
I think,
uh,
well, I think you got to decide how much you're talking about,
okay.
right? Um, what you're bringing into the conversation, how it's affecting your relationship.
Could you be
Uh,
with someone of a different political affiliation?
I think if there was like extremes, no.
Yeah.
Like I also think
Listen, maybe 20 years ago, but shit's so different now.
it's so
The
different.
political divide is so bad and it's
Is.
so heated.
Yeah.
I feel like 20 years ago, people could be married, doesn't matter. Oh, this is who your dad is, whatever. Like now it's like, oh my God, your husband's a
Yes.
Republican and
It
you're
like
a Democrat.
becomes who you are. Like it becomes so
Yeah.
embedded in like, oh, this is who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Um,
But I guess also for me, the social issues are so significant
yes.
because they like affect us so much.
Yeah,
I think
I guess
that's
it would
part of it for me.
I guess it would depend like what is the reason why they're on one side as opposed to another side.
It's
So,
this is too raw for us. We can't give advice about this, huh?
well, because I think it's a raw topic in general. Like
Yeah.
I think it's hard to give advice on it because I think you can really ask yourself like, what are your values? Where does it fall? Like I think what we're really talking about is values.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And that is why it's hard to talk about, because it's not necessarily, I mean, it is about politics, but it's also like, where do my
Value
values
system.
fall
Yeah.
in here, and my value system? And the reason why it can be difficult in a relationship is that you're bringing up, like, it's highlighting differences in your values,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which that in and of itself, I think, can be really separating, like,
Yeah.
can be really distancing, because we don't sit down and talk about, well, what are your values? Here are what
Mm-hmm.
my values are, which we recommend, right? Once again, we're therapists. We
Yes.
recommend you talk about everything. But I think that in the divide, it really highlights the differences in your values, which can be a very touchy subject, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you're married, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize that this was a value. This is a really strong value that I have. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize that you don't agree with that, or that's different for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I feel about you now?
So then some would say, can religious and non-religious work?
Once again, I think it depends on, like, how the, like, extremes of it, and like how,
Like if you're Amish and your
yeah,
partner's not, that's probably going to be a problem.
right. Well, I would think that if one partner is like so extreme, that they probably wouldn't be with someone
That's
who
probably
isn't
true.
religious.
Yeah. But I
Um,
mean, all right, it's like my husband is like super anti religion. Like
yeah.
literally look at his nightstand and there's like a book that says like God is not great. So like my husband is like super anti. I am kind of like woo woo spiritual. You know this. Like I'm a
Yes.
little bit like but it's not organized religion.
Right.
So like ours works fine because like I'm just like I don't know man, I got to talk to the moon. Oh man, last night before bedtime,
You talk to the moon?
Millie was like I want to go out the door to talk to the moon. And I was like, it's raining out. We're not going to go out the door. She's like, can we open the window and talk to the moon?
Beautiful. She's
And I
also
was
a
like,
spiritual
I
lady.
know. Oh my gosh, she loves nature. And so I'm like, yes. So then we like get down. I'm like, is this kid about to pray? Like I was sort of like, what's happening right now? Right. Like she gets down, she looks out the window and she goes, I wish it was summer.
Okay. I'm going to talk to the moon too.
And
Right.
I was like, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Right. Like we are truly talking to the moon.
I
But I didn't
love
know where that
that.
was going to go.
And I'm going to try that tonight. And I
Yes.
hope that it works.
Well, she got mad at me because then I said, I actually would like a tiny bit of more winter and then I'll take summer.
I would like spring. Where's Punxsutawney Phil when you need him? Where
When is that? Is that February?
It's coming up February 2nd. Weren't we having a conversation about Punxsutawney Phil
Was
recently?
that on the podcast or no?
No, it was just between the two of us. We were talking about Punxsutawney Phil.
I was saying how like if you okay, so Punxsutawney Phil is from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. We obviously live in Pennsylvania, and I went to Penn State, which is like the middle of Pennsylvania. But like, if you don't know, like, if you live in Pennsylvania, you know 500 people that went to Penn State. Like, there's like some insane statistic that like 1 in every 3 Pennsylvanians are married to a Penn Stater
Right.
because it's not just like the main campus. There's like all these branch campuses, like whatever. It's like a huge thing. And so it's not so people. The thing you might not realize because you don't see in TV is that like people like tailgate like Groundhog Day. Like people like drive there at 3 in the morning and get like fucked up before this groundhog comes out.
Wow.
Um, so I think we were talking like, should we go? We would never do that. But people from Penn State used to do that. They used to wake up at 3 in the morning, drive, like they would drive and go get wasted for this groundhog to come out. And I was like, yeah, no shit. This guy crawls back in his hole. He's
Of
like
course.
traumatized.
Right. He probably looks out. He's probably like, what the fuck is everyone doing here? Who are these
Yes.
drunk people?
So I guess he comes out next week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he
Okay,
sees his
good.
shadow.
So religious or non-religious work. Punxsutawney Phil.
Really took a turn. Really took a
But
turn there.
so I think so. I guess that's what we're saying is like is any type of extreme, right? And they can even go back to the parenting thing. If I am like so like this is the only way to parent, it's probably not going to go very well.
Yeah.
So the question is, where is there compromise in your relationship? That's going to be the big question about opposites. Of course, opposites attract. The question is, do they work?
Yeah. And
That's what
can
we're
you
saying, right?
compromise within them? Right. And I think when we talk about opposites, we're talking about such extremes. And I think that's why we
Mm,
keep going back to like how extreme, right? But when we talk about extremes in that way, we talk about it in kind of like a rigidity of like, this person's all the way on this end and this person's all the way on this end. Does that work? Where you might have different parts of you that you haven't
Mm.
accessed, right? And there's nuance in every situation. And maybe in one situation you feel one way, another situation you feel another way. So you also might want to think about, you know, are there times in which I maybe don't fall as much on this extreme? Like, can I move towards the middle a little bit? And what does that look like? Because sometimes when our partner falls on one side, it almost pushes us so far to the other side to feel like we have to defend our opinion or defend what's going on for us. Right. And then we kind of go in this back and forth that like polarizes us even more, as opposed to looking at how do we bring ourselves together? How do we look at the nuances of this? How do we connect over the differences? Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, totally. So, I want to talk about this one. Hobbies. My partner has hobbies I can't do, like extreme sports, and it can make me feel not good enough.
Oh, first of all, I think it's great your partner has hobbies. It's great to have your own interests. And
Yeah.
I think there's this belief that in order to stay connected in a relationship, you need to be doing the same things and you need to be doing
Mm,
them together and you can't have your own thing. And I really believe that a healthy relationship allows both of you to hold on to your own individual identities and stay connected to one another. And that might mean each of you having different hobbies. And so I'm wondering for this person what their expectations are about activities and if they need to be together. Are you allowed to have your own hobbies? Is this something that your partner is upset about? Does your partner feel disconnected from you? Or is this a pressure that you're putting on yourself?
yeah. Um, how do I communicate with my partner when they expect me to react like they would, but I don't? Mm. I would say literally that. Sometimes I struggle to communicate with you because I feel like you expect me to react the way you did, but that's not who I am. Here's how I react. I would bring that concern directly into it. Let them hear that concern from you. Can they hear that? Can they see that it's different? I think it's really normal for people to like make assumptions, right? Like it's kind of just like a thing that humans do. We realize that we forget that people are different than us. And so we make assumptions and we jump to conclusions with that. Bring that concern directly into the conversation.
I would also be curious, if you could ask your partner, what is it about the fact that I'm not reacting in the same way? Like what upsets you about that? Like because I think the oftentimes if we're not having the same reaction, that the assumption is, oh, you must not care or you
Mhm.
must not, right? Because maybe your partner feels something and expresses it immediately, right? Whereas when you feel that same thing, you do something different with it. And so I would be curious as to like how your partner is interpreting that, you not reacting in the same way. Um, and in this example, if they feel like you don't care, right? For you to get underneath that and understand that so that you can express that, no, I actually do care. Like I'm just in my head about it. I'm thinking about it. So I just react to it differently. I really do care. Is there a way that I can express to you that I care without reacting in the same way that you're reacting? What does that look like for us?
Yeah. Um, uh, I think that's good. So I'm the only one proactively starting conversations. How to encourage more participation. It's probably just going to be you. And I'm saying that in a way of like, that's such an important role that for me, I think it's more important that you do that hard thing than thinking about things being fair.
Yeah. Well, and in that, right? Let's say you start it. Let's say you're the initiator. I wonder how much you're asking questions to
Mm.
the other person
How
because
much, or how much you're just talking.
yeah, or how much you're just talking at them,
Ah.
right? So you might be the initiator. Maybe your partner never initiates the conversation, but sometimes when we want our partner to talk, to be included, we just talk at them and we think, oh, this is going to help. Like if I talk at them, maybe it'll like bring them out of their shell and maybe they'll
Mhm.
start talking. The thing that we forget is that we need to also ask our partner questions and give them space, right? If your partner isn't one to bring things up if maybe they're more internal about things. If you ask them a question and then give them space to be able to think and then answer it, it might invite them into the conversation more.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think sometimes when we ask questions, if they don't answer immediately, then you start talking over them, right? All anxious. And so if you ask your partner a question to invite them into the conversation and then give them space to be able to think about and then answer the question.
Mm-hmm. I just want to talk about this one for fun.
Okay, I love that.
Life insurance. If I bring it up, he brings up the true crime podcast I listen to and deflects. What? You
Like
should have life insurance.
consistently?
I don't know. You should have life insurance. It's reasonable.
I don't have life insurance.
You should have life
And
insurance.
listen, but let me tell you about this true crime podcast that I just listened to. Let me tell you about Scamanda.
Wait, you should have life insurance.
Yeah, I don't. Should I get it?
You're the breadwinner in your family. You should absolutely have life insurance.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I'll talk to an insurance broker about it. This has turned into a podcast about us.
So, I don't know. I just needed to bring up that person is bringing that up. I don't know.
Wait, what number?
Okay.
What number is that? I want to answer it.
Oh no, wait. I delete my questions afterwards. Mine is
Um,
now 14 on mine, but I delete other ones. I don't know, but we're gonna run out of time, and we have to talk about libido
okay.
because people are gonna want to know about sexual desire.
Yes.
Because that is one of the most we'll say mixed ones. Here's the deal about sexual libido. Never is your partner going to have the same libido as you. It's simply just not going to happen. But so this person said libido, mine is close to 0 and his ... is not. So one, I would encourage you to explore what's happening that yours is close to 0. I would encourage you to think about the type of sex you're having if you enjoy that. I would encourage you to think about your experience with sex and your thoughts and feelings and values around sex. And I would be interested in knowing about the conversation around sex in your relationship and how this goes over. Is there shame for not wanting to have it? Is there avoidance around it? Do you have trauma? Any of these things. But just so folks know, this is a typical thing many couples struggle with.
I would also ask, is your libido close to 0 just in the relationship? Are you masturbating? Are you feeling sexually charged in other ways? Because that might just give you information about where the lack of libido might be coming from. The key here too is not to personalize the other person's lack of interest in sex and to have a conversation about it. Someone wrote, "Why does my husband make excuses not to have sex with me?" I would talk to him about it, right? To say like, "Hey, like I'm just curious. I understand my libido is higher than yours. Like what's going on for you? Do you have a lower libido? Like, are there reasons why you're not interested in sex?" Like really having an open dialogue about it. That can be very vulnerable because we do tend to personalize it.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to have the conversation because easily that gets swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm. We could do a full episode about that. Sex and
We
desire.
probably should.
Yeah. Okay. Nikki, write that down. Full episode about sex and desire. We can talk about that more because now we're running out of time. We have to do Dear Jem and Em. So, dear Em and Jen, money is a source of security for me and a sense of freedom for him. I do everything in my power to save every penny, and he has no problem spending. It's interesting that we come from similar financial upbringings as both of our parents really struggled to pay the bills, but we both ended up on opposite spectrums of how we view finances. He knows we will make our finances all work out in the end of every month, while I am always worried that my car will break down or a big and needed purchase will surprise us. Does this mean we are not compatible? That's not what that means.
No.
Just so.
And this is also a very common dynamic that
Yes.
happens in relationships. Very, very common.
But it does mean we have to figure out a system that works for us.
Yes.
So maybe if to say, I understand I'm not trying to totally be rigid about our finances, but could we talk about putting this much away each month? Could we figure out before we start spending that we have 6 months of a safety blanket, right? So part of this is coming up with another system together. But I want to be clear, that's not, we're never gonna like look at something and be like, oh yeah, that's a deal breaker.
Right.
Right. But it's something to really be talked about and to figure out how we're going to navigate this together. And that conversation should come from a place not of stress. It's not something that when it happens, when the car needs to repair, where you say, well, this is your effing fault. If only you had saved
Like
that
the
money. Right.
first time you censored yourself.
Look at us. Look at me growing and changing.
Look at that growth.
Look
Know
at that.
yourself, grow yourself.
There we go, baby. So right. So it has to come from a time of, hey, I am just thinking about how much I love our relationship and how much I love being with you. And I want to get ahead of any potential future conflict. I know we have really different values and ways that we see money. Could we talk about navigating those together a little better? What could work for you? What could work for me? What could work for us?
And with that, you can say, I don't want this to affect our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel separate from you. I don't want to feel resentful of you. I want to figure out something that works for us both. And
Yes.
with that, once again, comes compromise. And without the conversation, there is no compromise. And the more that your partner spends, the more you might be holding tightly onto your money, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
where the polarizing really happens when there is no conversation about compromise. You might feel like, okay, well, because there's so much spending on this end, well, it's my job then to hold on to the money. It's my job then to make sure that we're protected if anything comes up. And then that's where resentment builds. And then you're on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So, how do you inch closer where you get to say, I understand I have a lot of anxiety about money, but it's really important for me in order to feel secure, once again, to have these funds. How do we make this work?
All right.
There it is. That's our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating review and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget to grow yourself. You got to know yourself.